On March 8, 2021, the waters off the coast of Point Reyes, California were calm, the ocean gleaming under a pale morning sun. Located about 30 miles northwest of San Francisco, the area was known for its rugged beauty and rich marine life. It had long been a hotspot for fishermen, surfers, and marine enthusiasts. However, beneath the tranquil surface, the waters had a darker reputation. Over the years, sporadic reports of great white shark sightings had circulated among locals, though the frequency of attacks was low. That changed on this fateful day. John Harris, a 48-year-old fisherman from Clearwater, Florida, had traveled across the country for what he called the trip of a lifetime. Known among his friends for his adventurous spirit and sharp sense of humor, John had spent years exploring fishing destinations around the United States. He had rented a small boat, the Golden Marlin, and set out alone from a harbor in Marin County early that morning. He planned to spend the day deep-sea fishing, far from the crowded shorelines of California. John was no stranger to the risks of solo fishing in open water. He had once joked that the fish was more dangerous than the ocean, but his confidence bordered on complacency, and he paid little attention to the warnings issued by local authorities about shark activity in the area. The waters off Point Reyes were part of the so-called Red Triangle, a stretch of ocean notorious for being a hunting ground for great white sharks. Still, John dismissed the warnings as exaggerated. By noon, John had already hauled in a decent catch of Pacific halibut and rockfish. Standing on the deck of his small boat, he was focused on reeling in a particularly stubborn fish when his foot slipped on the wet surface. Before he could regain his balance, he tumbled overboard, plunging into the cold, dark water. At first, he was more annoyed than alarmed. He had taken falls before and was confident he could climb back aboard the Golden Marlin. However, as he surfaced gasping for air, he felt an unshakable sense of dread. Unbeknownst to John, a 17-foot great white shark had been circling the boat, likely attracted by the blood and bait in the water. The creature was a massive female, its dark silhouette cutting through the water like a torpedo. Within seconds, the shark closed in. When the attack came, it was swift and brutal. The shark struck John from below its jaws, clamping down on his right thigh. The force of the bite was enough to sever muscle and snap bone, leaving John in shock and agony. In an attempt to defend himself, he flailed wildly, but the shark's strength and size were too much for him. It swung its head wildly, its razor-sharp teeth tearing through flesh. Victor and Marjorie Bellamy, a retired couple, were sailing their yacht, the Sea Thistle, nearby when they noticed the disturbance. At first, Victor thought it was an attack on a seal, but Marjorie soon spotted the vivid orange of John's life jacket. They quickly turned their boat toward the scene and radioed for assistance, though neither could have predicted the horror they were about to encounter. When the Sea Thistle arrived, the Golden Marlin was floating eerily with its deck empty, and the water was a deep red. The Bellamys scanned the water but couldn't find John. All that remained was a torn fragment of his life jacket, drifting amidst the wreckage. Later, Victor described the scene as something out of a nightmare. Within an hour of the incident, the Coast Guard launched a search and rescue operation. Divers braved the shark-infested waters, and helicopters scoured the area. But all they found were pieces of John's fishing gear and his bloody life jacket. It soon became clear that John Harris was no longer there. The local community and beyond were shaken by the attack. Shark specialists weighed in on the incident, including Dr. Linus Caldwell of the Monterey Bay Aquarium. According to Dr. Caldwell, great white sharks rarely purposefully attack people. It's possible the shark mistook John for a seal or another type of prey. The attack was so intense that even experienced marine biologists were unsettled. In the weeks following the tragedy, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife issued several warnings to local fishermen and boaters. Marinas posted signs and local news outlets aired shark safety segments. Despite these efforts, the waters of the Red Triangle remained some of the riskiest for fishermen and swimmers. For those who knew John Harris, his death was a sobering reminder of the ocean's unpredictable and often unforgiving nature. His family and friends remembered him as someone who lived life to the fullest, despite the dangers, at a memorial service in Clearwater. Victor Bellamy, who was present at the scene, later said that he couldn't stop thinking about the image of the blood-stained water. For months, he and Marjorie stopped sailing, troubled by the realization that they had been so close yet powerless to help. Though the waters off Point Reyes eventually calmed, John Harris's story remained a terrifying warning to anyone who ventured out into the ocean. Despite its vastness and beauty, the sea remained a place of wonder and constant danger. The whole country was engulfed in horror that began in August 2024 in the coastal town of Byron Bay, New South Wales. Byron Bay, well known for its gorgeous beaches and active surfing scene, has long been a water lover's paradise. Its turquoise waters and serene charm, however, concealed an unprecedented nightmare, an apex predator lurking just below the surface. The community was left in shock after 30 people were killed by an exceptionally hostile great white shark over 3 days. Early on August 3, 2024, the first attack took place. A group of surfers, including 28-year-old Caleb Morrison and his friends, were enjoying the morning waves off Wategos Beach. Witnesses reported that a large fin slicing through the swell abruptly disturbed the glassy surface of the water. The first victim was Caleb. His board broke in two as the shark, which was thought to be more than 20 feet long, lunged with such force. Beachgoers were alerted by the screams of other surfers as they rushed to shore. To conduct an investigation, local authorities and marine specialists were called in under the direction of Detective Olivia Keating and Sergeant Ronan Vickers. The predator was identified as a great white based on the size of the bite marks on Caleb's remains. Although shark attacks were not unusual in the area, this attack's severity caused immediate concerns. Although warnings were given and the beach was closed, the nightmare was far from over. A mile away from the initial attack site at Clark's Beach, the shark made another attack by noon that same day. 2 tourists were pulled under the water before anyone could react, indicating that it was targeting swimmers this time. After several hours, rescue crews found their bodies, which bore the same severe bite marks. Panic engulfed the town. Locals avoided the water and families postponed their vacations. Patrols searching the waves for any sign of the predator left the once bustling beaches eerily deserted. Dr. Nathaniel Greaves of the Australian Shark Research Institute was among the experts offering their opinions as word of the attack spread. He hypothesized that environmental factors like declining fish populations or warming ocean temperatures might have influenced the shark's behavior. Nonetheless, it was nearly unheard of for a single shark to target people specifically. Survivors and onlookers characterized the animal's actions as disturbingly premeditated, bordering on predatory and going against the instincts of sharks. The second day was even more terrifying. The shark struck Tallow Beach, Belongal Beach, and a small cove that divers frequent on August 4th. Every assault was more deadly and quicker than the one before it. After 40 years of fishing in these waters, local fisherman Edgar "Eddie" Rollins claimed to have seen the shark break the surface close to his trawler. It was the largest, most menacing thing that Eddie had ever seen, and it had scars along its dorsal fin that looked as if they were from countless battles. There was a surge in attempts to kill or capture the shark. Drones fitted with cameras and baited hooks were launched from helicopters that circled the coastline. Eddie was among the fishermen who offered their boats for the search, but each effort ended in disappointment. Disappearing into deeper waters and then reappearing in unexpected places, the shark appeared to avoid traps with remarkable accuracy. The death toll increased to 27 by the third day. The New South Wales government approved an unprecedented massive culling operation on August 5th. Using drumlines and nets, dozens of boats spread out across the bay. Using his understanding of the waters, Eddie, who had turned into a reluctant local hero, led search teams. Ronan Vickers and Olivia Keating oversaw onshore operations in the interim, making sure that beaches were closed off and that locals were informed. That night, the shark struck once more as the sun began to set. The target this time was a boat anchored close to the well-known diving location, Julian Rocks. The ship, which had a captain and 3 divers on board, was repeatedly rammed. The survivors described the shark's cold, calculating eyes, and the boat seemed inconsequential due to its immense size. 2 of the divers had been taken by the time assistance arrived, their gear shredded and floating in the bloody water. The attack ceased as suddenly as they had started. Authorities discovered no signs of the shark on the morning of August 6th. The predator appeared to have disappeared into the vast ocean despite using every resource available. Ronan and Olivia declared the immediate threat eliminated, but their relief was illusory. The community's faith in the picturesque coastline of Byron Bay was destroyed and the waters felt permanently tainted. After that, there was a lot of speculation. Some residents thought the shark had suffered injuries during the culling process and had fled to perish in the depths. Others, like Eddie, believed it was still there, a specter of the sea awaiting its next chance. Dr. Greaves and his colleagues carried out additional research examining forensic evidence from the attacks as well as environmental data. Even though they disregarded the shark's intentional targeting, there were still unanswered questions regarding its behavior. Byron Bay struggled to recover in the months that followed. Local companies suffered as tourism fell. Along the beaches, memorials were placed in remembrance of the 30 people who died. Once a man of the sea, Eddie Rollins gave up fishing because he was troubled by what he had seen. Although they were praised for their leadership, Olivia Keating and Ronan Vickers bore the burden of unanswered questions. The shark, then known as the Byron Bay Butcher, became a terrifying part of local folklore. Some people reported seeing its fin, a shadowy figure slicing through the waves on misty mornings. Others wrote such tales off as the result of grief and fear. However, those who survived those 3 terrifying days could still clearly recall the predator's premeditated terror. New struggles and victories eclipsed the events of August 2024 as the years went by, fading into the past. Still, there was an unspoken caution about the waters of Byron Bay. Beneath their beauty lay a reminder of nature's unpredictability and the fine line between human vulnerability and dominance. For those who ventured into the ocean, the tale of the great white shark that killed 30 people in 3 days served as a chilling reminder of the sea's strength and mystique. California's Monterey Bay, known for its biodiversity, is a section of the ocean surrounded by rocky cliffs. The bay is famous for its kelp forests, abundant marine life, and playful sea lions. It has also gained a reputation as a great white shark hotspot. Sightings of these apex predators have increased recently, alarming local fishermen and divers. September marked the peak of their migratory season when sharks approached the coast in pursuit of seals. Kelly Thompson met a tragic and untimely end on a clear Thursday morning during this dangerous time of year. A 29-year-old freelance underwater photographer, she had been diving in Monterey Bay for years. She was raised with the ocean as her playground in the seaside town of Carmel by the Sea. She was bold and adventurous, according to her friends, and she viewed the ocean as an extension of herself rather than a dangerous place. To raise awareness of the environmental issues endangering the ecosystem, Kelly recently embarked on a project to document the Monterey Bay kelp forests. The last dive she would make was on September 15, 2022. Kelly reached San Carlos Beach, a well-liked diving entry point that morning. Only a few divers were setting up their equipment on the quiet beach. Her old blue pickup truck was parked, and she started unloading her gear. One of the other divers, Darren Holbrook, a local instructor renowned for his caution, was present. Kelly had appeared composed, even happy as she got ready for her dive, he recalled later. Unbeknownst to her, she was wearing a bright yellow wetsuit and carrying a high-resolution underwater camera, which would make her an even more obvious target in the hazy waters ahead. That day, Monterey Bay waters were surprisingly inviting. There was hardly any wind rippling the waves, and the surface was quiet by 9:30 a.m. Kelly got into the water. As she swam in the direction of the kelp forest, her fins cut through the water. She intended to dive alone, something she frequently did despite advice from friends and coworkers. Kelly had always liked the peace of the ocean because she could concentrate better on her photography without other people distracting her. The eerie beauty of the kelp forest surrounded Kelly as she dove deeper into the water. The tall, golden-brown fronds created a surreal, cathedral-like ambiance as they swayed gently with the current. She stopped to take a picture of an enormous leopard shark moving elegantly through the kelp as schools of fish swooped past her. Only the faint creaks of the kelp shifting in the water and the rhythmic bubbles escaping from her regulator were audible. The predator's silent approach broke the moment of calm and concentration. Kelly had no idea she was being watched. Witness reports and bite patterns later revealed that a 17-foot great white shark had been prowling the area. Being ambush predators, these sharks use speed and stealth to kill their prey. Its predatory instincts were probably aroused by Kelly's bright wetsuit and her leisurely movements among the kelp. With its enormous body blending in perfectly with the open ocean shadows, the shark came up behind. It was an abrupt and vicious attack. Kelly was unexpectedly attacked by the shark, which clamped down on her right leg with its strong jaws. Her limb was immediately severed by the bite force, and blood poured into the water in a cloud. Kelly's body trembled in shock as she struggled to understand the unbearable agony. Her camera slipped out of her hand and slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. Unconcerned by her actions, The great white let go of her severed leg and recirculated for another blow. Later, Darren Holbrook and other witnesses on a nearby dive boat reported seeing a red stain smearing across the surface of the water. Darren, who had been guiding a team of inexperienced divers nearer the coast, realized right away that something was amiss. As he radioed for emergency help, he remembered yelling for everyone to exit the water. However, the situation had gotten out of hand before anyone could act to save Kelly. Even more devastating was the shark's second attack. It swung at Kelly's side, its fangs ripping into her torso and through her wetsuit. She was violently shaken by the predator, which attempted to render its victim unconscious by flailing its enormous tail in the water. Blood gushed from Kelly's wounds, causing her body to go limp and her struggles to stop. Although it wasn't complete, the shark let her go once more. It made one last circle, this time aiming for her chest. In a matter of seconds, it disemboweled her after tearing into her body with a single terrifying bite. Now that the water was swollen with blood, Kelly's corpse started to sink. Little remained for recovery when the Coast Guard arrived. Only a few pieces of a ripped wetsuit and a floating pool of blood indicated where the attack had occurred. Hours passed while divers looked around in the hopes of finding Kelly's body, but to no avail. The great white shark likely pulled her remains into deeper waters well out of the search team's reach. Her camera, discovered lying on the ocean floor, was the only object found. Remarkably undamaged, the memory card held the last pictures Kelly had taken. Eerie images of the kelp forest and her last peaceful moments before the assault. The diving community was shocked to learn of Kelly's passing. After years of being regarded as a diver's paradise, Monterey Bay suddenly felt terrifying. Marine biologist Dr. Evelyn Marquette and other local officials warned divers to be extremely cautious due to the area's increased number of great white sharks. The increase in shark activity, according to Dr. Marquette, was probably caused by the increasing number of seals, which attracted the predators nearer to the coast. She stressed that shark attacks on humans were uncommon and typically the result of misidentification. But her assurances did little to allay the community's fears. Her passing devastated Kelly's friends and family. In a statement, her parents, Alan and Judith Thompson, expressed their sorrow over their daughter's passing and urged more people to be mindful of ocean safety. Kelly was portrayed as a fearless, fervent young woman who had died doing what she loved. To honor her memory, dozens of friends, fellow divers, and locals gathered on the shores of Monterey Bay for a memorial service. Kelly's life and contributions were honored with a plaque near San Carlos Beach and flowers thrown into the ocean. Numerous divers avoided Monterey Bay in the months after the attack. Only the bravest and most experienced people were entering the water at the once bustling dive sites, which became uncannily quiet. The revenue of some local businesses that depended on tourism fell precipitously. The assault on Kelly Thompson served as a sobering reminder of the unpredictable nature of the ocean and the fine line separating people from the natural world. Those who knew Kelly Thompson and those who visit Monterey Bay are still haunted by her story. Her camera, which is now housed in a nearby maritime museum, is a terrifying reminder of her last dive. And while the ocean is still as stunning and enigmatic as ever, it also bears the scars of a brutal assault, serving as a reminder that there is a world beneath its surface that is both merciless and magnificent. The stunning seaside town of Byron Bay, located in Australia's New South Wales, is well known for its immaculate beaches, glistening waters, and abundant marine life. The area, which is well known for being a haven for swimmers and surfers, has experienced its share of shark activity over the years, but nothing could have prepared the locals for the tragedy that occurred on February 4th, 2024. A lot was going on at the beach that Sunday morning. Swimmers delighted in the warm summer waters, families relaxed on the sand, and kids constructed intricate sandcastles. One of them, Laura Miller, 34, was a Melbourne-based marketing executive who was on a weekend trip to Byron Bay. A skilled swimmer, Laura had always loved the sea and often swam in open waters. That morning, she chose to escape the crowded shoreline and enjoy the solitude of the deeper sea. She had no idea it would be her last swim. Laura entered the water near Clark's Beach, a popular spot for both locals and visitors. The sky was clear, the waves gentle, perfect conditions for swimming. About 200 meters offshore, where the water was calm and inviting, she paddled with confidence. But a predator lurked beneath the surface, ready to turn the picturesque setting into a nightmare. At approximately 10:45 a.m., Harold Hal Brimstone, a 52-year-old veteran of the Byron Bay Surf Life Saving Club and an experienced lifeguard, noticed unusual activity in the deeper waters. A group of dolphins that had been playing nearby suddenly scattered, behaving strangely. Hal immediately recognized this as a potential warning sign, having spent decades studying marine life from his post on the lifeguard tower. He radioed Tess Marlowe, a 29-year-old lifeguard stationed closer to the water, instructing her to keep a close watch on the area. However, the attack began before anyone could intervene. Marine authorities later determined that the 15-foot great white shark was a mature female that had been cruising the area. Swimming alone, Laura became the shark's target, likely drawn by the splashing of swimmers and possibly the scent of fish from nearby reefs. Suddenly, with immense force, the predator struck, clamping its powerful jaws around her left leg. The impact was so severe that it instantly severed her limb, leaving Laura in shock and agony. Her scream pierced the air, startling swimmers closer to shore. The shark was far from finished. As blood mixed with the water, Laura struggled to stay afloat. The shark briefly released her, only to circle back quickly and terrifyingly. The second strike was even more devastating. The shark's razor-sharp teeth tore through flesh and bone as it bit into her side. As Laura's body went limp, the water turned a deep, horrifying red. On shore, bystanders watched in shock, unable to process the brutality unfolding before them. Tess and Hal immediately sprang into action, racing toward the scene on a rescue jet ski. But the attack had happened so quickly that by the time they reached Laura, it was clear there was nothing they could do. Her body had been severely dismembered, with several parts missing. Only a gruesome trail of blood and floating debris remained as the shark disappeared into the depths, perhaps having mistaken her for a seal or other prey. The aftermath was chaotic. As lifeguards and first responders secured the area, swimmers were pulled from the water. Police arrived to investigate the incident, including Detective Sergeant Roderick "Roddy" Vance. An experienced officer, Roddy, known for his steely exterior, later admitted that the scene was one of the most horrifying he had ever witnessed. Although it was a violent and random act of nature, there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. To monitor shark activity, authorities quickly closed all beaches in the Byron Bay region, posting signs and deploying drones. To assess the situation, Dr. Eloise Chappell, a marine biologist and consultant for the Department of Primary Industries in New South Wales, was called in. Although the great white shark's actions were horrifying, she explained that they were in line with its natural instincts. In a press conference, she stated that sharks do not hunt people, and that the attack was most likely a case of misidentification. The splashing of swimmers could have mimicked the movements of injured seals or fish, which are the primary food sources for sharks. Laura's death shocked both the local and wider communities. Byron Bay, typically associated with tranquility and beauty, was now the site of a horrific accident. Travelers canceled their reservations, and businesses that relied on beachgoers reported a significant decline in trade. Memorials were held on the beach in the following days, with candles and flowers placed in the sand to honor Laura's memory. Her family, devastated by the loss, issued a statement urging beachgoers to respect the ocean and its inhabitants. The attack reignited debates about shark safety measures in Australia. Some locals, like fisherman Amos Trenchard, called for increased shark culling to prevent future tragedies. Others, including marine conservationist Felix Durham, opposed such measures, stressing the need to preserve the delicate balance of marine ecosystems. Felix told a local news outlet that they couldn't let fear dictate their actions. As summer progressed, Byron Bay gradually returned to normal, though the memory of Laura Miller's death lingered. For lifeguards like Hal and Tess, the incident served as a grim reminder of the ocean's unpredictability. Despite their best efforts to keep people safe, nature ultimately has the final say. The tragedy of Laura Miller remains one of the most brutal shark attacks in recent memory, etched in the history of Byron Bay. While the beaches eventually reopened, many swimmers found themselves looking over their shoulders, acutely aware of the unseen dangers lurking just beneath the surface. Cod, Massachusetts was bustling with summer activity on the serene morning of July 3, 2020. Tourists had been drawn to this popular destination for decades, attracted by its picturesque coastlines and charming towns. The beaches along the Cape, especially near Truro, were filled with swimmers, families, and avid surfers. But beneath the beautiful waves, a growing concern was surfacing: an increase in great white shark sightings, driven by the area's thriving seal population. Locals had begun calling it the Summer of Sharks, but no one could have predicted the impending catastrophe. For the holiday, Sophie Lewis, a 27-year-old teacher from New Jersey, had been spending time with friends on Cape Cod. Sophie was known for her adventurous spirit and love of the ocean, though she wasn't an experienced swimmer. She and her friends, nurse Nadine Price and tech consultant Caleb Hart, had camped out on Ballston Beach that morning. The chilly water offered a welcome respite from the summer heat, and the three of them laughed as they waded into the Atlantic. Caleb and Nadine stayed closer to the shore, while Sophie, eager to explore, swam farther out. Near the shallows, the water was clear, but as Sophie swam farther out, it became murkier. Unbeknownst to her, a 16-foot great white shark, a female often seen in the area according to local researchers, was prowling nearby. Due to the large number of seals in the area, these apex predators had been observed getting closer to the coast over time. Sophie, casually splashing, was now within striking distance. Unexpectedly, the shark attacked. With remarkable force, its jaws clamped down on Sophie's leg as it surged upward from below, silent and powerful. Her limb was nearly severed in the disastrous first bite. Sophie thrashed around, her cries drowned out by the vastness of the ocean. Caleb and Nadine froze in horror as they saw her disappear beneath the surface, only to resurface moments later in a frothy mix of blood and water. The shark, acting on instinct, struck again. With terrifying efficiency, its subsequent bite ripped through muscle and crushed bone as it tore into her chest. The predator's overwhelming strength rendered Sophie powerless. Fear and the sobering realization that they were helpless to save her left her friends unable to do anything but watch. Nadine, shaking, tried to call for help on her phone but found no signal. Caleb yelled toward the lifeguard stand, but the distance made it impossible to communicate clearly. The water had become eerily still by the time a lifeguard boat arrived, guided by terrified bystanders pointing toward the chaos. Sophie's body was discovered mangled and barely recognizable, not far from the scene of the attack. The aftermath of the shark's disappearance would haunt her friends and the neighborhood. The tragedy rocked Cape Cod, and fears about the expanding shark population were reignited as word of the attack spread. Marine specialists clarified that although these occurrences were horrifying, they were uncommon and usually the result of misidentification. Sharks frequently mistake swimmers for their favorite prey seals. Such explanations, however, did little to reassure those who knew Sophie. For weeks, Nadine and Caleb battled trauma and guilt. They recounted the events to authorities and spoke with grief counselors, but the memories proved impossible to shake. Sophie's death became a grim reminder of the ocean's unpredictable dangers and the fragile balance between humans and nature. Local authorities installed new warning systems and detection buoys as part of increased shark monitoring efforts. Beaches posted signs warning swimmers not to go out alone and to stay close to shore. Ballston Beach, once associated with carefree summer days, now carries a somber connotation. The attack served as a stark reminder to Sophie's loved ones and the people of Cape Cod of nature's untamed power. The fact that humans are not the top predators in the ocean became a sobering truth. With her name forever marked in the tragic history of Cape Cod's Summer of Sharks, Sophie's story became a warning. Daytona Beach, Florida was bustling with the excitement of spring breakers and locals taking in the immaculate beaches on March 28, 2022. Bright sunshine and soft waves crashing against the sand made for the ideal weather. The area was crowded with thousands of beachgoers who filled the shoreline with sunbathers, colorful umbrellas, and kids making sandcastles. Surfers and swimmers alike were using the enticing water, making the ocean equally busy. One of them was Michael Adams, a 29-year-old resident of Savannah, Georgia, who loved swimming and fitness. Given its lengthy history as a popular destination for vacationers, Daytona Beach has seen its fair share of mishaps. Nonetheless, most people thought it was safe. Attacks by sharks were even less common than sightings of the animals. A wide range of marine life, including bull sharks, which are notoriously violent but rarely involved in fatal encounters, could be found in the waters off the coast. The ecosystem, according to the locals, had stabilized over the years, allowing people and marine life to live in harmony. That belief would be dispelled on this day, though. Michael and Valerie Harris, a friend of his who is 26 years old, had arrived early that morning. They positioned themselves close to a lifeguard tower and chatted and took in the peaceful surroundings during the early hours of the day. Michael decided to swim at around noon. He stepped into the water with caution, initially staying in the shallows before stepping out. Valerie watched him move through the waves with ease while enjoying an iced drink on shore. The danger was already there, but no one knew it. For several minutes, a bull shark, which was estimated to be almost 10 feet long, had been swimming near the shore. It blended in with the ocean floor, its dark silhouette moving with almost uncanny stealth. A school of fish darted tensely nearby, indicating the predator's approach. It was strange how the shark stayed, seemingly taking in its surroundings rather than leaving the busy activity. It was around 12:45 p.m. when the unimaginable happened. Michael abruptly thrashed in the water, now about 50 yards from the coast. People on the beach thought he was playing at first, but his frantic movements soon revealed otherwise. Near Valerie, a man shouted something inaudible over the din of the crowd, pointing toward the ocean. Upon realizing Michael was in grave danger, Valerie stood motionless, her heart sunk. With deliberate precision, the shark bit Michael's lower leg and dragged him under. Witnesses recounted a brief, horrifying struggle during which he tried to break free. When blood appeared in the water, the swimmers in the area became alarmed. Whistling through the confusion, lifeguards rushed into action and ordered everyone to leave the water right away. As a team raced to Michael's aid, rescue boards and jet skis were used. By the time the lifeguards arrived, Michael was seriously hurt. He was successfully hoisted onto a rescue board and taken to the shore, where paramedics were waiting. As medical staff frantically attempted to stabilize him, Valerie, who was pale and trembling, stood close to the scene. They did everything they could, but Michael passed away from his wounds a few minutes later. Many people in the crowd were left in stunned silence after his death. As authorities surrounded the area, inquiries started to surface. Local marine biologist Dr. Lionel Cuthbert was called in to evaluate the situation. He was asked why the shark had attacked so violently and why it had come so close to shore. Bull sharks are known to frequent shallow waters, particularly during warmer months when fish populations are abundant, he explained. However, he acknowledged that the intensity of the attack was out of the ordinary. Officer Dana Whitlock led law enforcement and wildlife officials in taking prompt action to protect the public. Access to the water was restricted and the beach was evacuated. Helicopters circled the coast looking for the shark's presence. It was later seen several miles north on drone footage, but it vanished before authorities could act. Frustration mounted as the predator eluded capture. In the days that followed, the incident dominated headlines. Michael's story became a tragic symbol of the unpredictability of nature. Interviews with witnesses painted a vivid picture of the attack, further fueling public fear. Social media platforms buzzed with debates about shark behavior, ocean safety, and human responsibility in marine environments. Some called for widespread culling of sharks, while others advocated for better education and coexistence strategies. Valerie struggled to come to terms with the loss of her friend. She described him as a kind, adventurous soul who had a deep respect for the ocean. She became an advocate for increasing awareness about shark safety while she was grieving. Valerie worked to promote responsible beach practices by collaborating with marine experts and hosting workshops for the community. The pristine beaches and warm turquoise waters of the Yasawa Islands painted a picture of paradise in October 2024, on a secluded island off the coast of Fiji. Travelers came from all over the world to find peace in nature's embrace and escape the chaos of their daily lives. A couple from Portland, Oregon, Sarah Calloway and her boyfriend Mark Kinsler, were among them. They had come to mend their deteriorating relationship, but their escape would quickly result in a nightmare that would garner international attention. To explore the nearby reefs, the couple had reserved a private boat tour. A local named Jonah, who served as their guide, led the small boat toward one of the archipelago's many shark-inhabited reefs. The place called Tavoro Reef had a bad reputation. There had been multiple shark sightings there over the years, some of which had resulted in fatalities. For tiger sharks and blacktip reef sharks, which were commonly observed in the region, the reef's jagged coral formations and deep underwater caverns provided the ideal habitat. The promise of adventure drew tourists to Tvoro despite its sinister reputation, thanks to its abundant marine life. Tensions between Sarah and Mark were already simmering, despite the bright day and the sun shining overhead. This trip was supposed to be a last-ditch attempt to save their relationship, which had been in trouble for months. Sarah, a shrewd and practical woman, had become more and more irritated with Mark's impetuous and frequently dangerous actions. Sarah's incessant criticism, however, felt oppressive to Mark. Instead of strengthening their relationship, this trip had made it worse. Jonah anchored the boat in a shallow area of the water, only a few hundred feet from the open ocean's edge, as it approached the reef. He gave the couple snorkeling equipment, went over safety precautions, and cautioned them against getting too far from the boat. Always on guard, Sarah listened intently, but Mark appeared preoccupied, fumbling with his phone and hardly paying attention to Jonah's directions. The guide chose to give the couple some space and retreated to the opposite end of the boat after noticing the tension. A minor argument about whether Mark was taking the trip seriously was the beginning of it. However, there were soon accusations, raised voices, and years of unresolved problems that surfaced. With her back to Mark, Sarah turned to face the endless expanse of water as she walked toward the edge of the boat, frustrated. Mark followed her, his temper erupting. He shoved her shoulder in a fit of rage, not expecting her to fall, but she did. Sarah's arms flailed as she lost her balance and stumbled over the narrow railing. She sank with a loud splash into the water and briefly vanished beneath it. Mark froze, his thoughts racing as he tried to make sense of what had just transpired. He thought for a moment that she would come back up right away and yell angrily at him. Her panic, however, was evident when she emerged, gasping and confused. Sarah's fall site was perilously close to the open ocean, where the water was dark and deep. Her fall had already drawn attention. Shadows started to move below the surface, slick, menacing forms shifting through the water. The sharks were approaching. Sarah tried to stay afloat and screamed for assistance, her voice breaking. She was a weak swimmer, and staying afloat was made more difficult by the weight of her wet clothing. Mark stayed motionless on the boat, his thoughts a jumble of uncertainty and guilt. When Jonah heard the chaos, he hurried to the edge of the boat and realized right away how serious the situation was. When Jonah reached for a life buoy and tossed it in Sarah's direction, it landed several feet away and was out of reach. At first, a 9-foot-long tiger shark, with a dorsal fin that sliced through the water like a knife, emerged. It moved slowly around Sarah. Its movements were predatory. As the water became more active, more fins started to break the surface. Mark froze in terror as Jonah yelled for him to assist in taking action. He was unable to jump right in. As the sharks got closer, Sarah's cries became more urgent. One of the sharks darted closer, bumping her leg as the water churned. Her natural reaction was to kick out, but it only seemed to annoy the predators. Jonah attempted to push the sharks away by grabbing a long pole from the boat, but the distance was too great. Things were getting out of hand. At last, Mark appeared to awaken from his daze. He prepared to jump in and drag Sarah back to the boat by grabbing a rope and tying it around his waist. But it was already too late when he clambered over the railing. The strong jaws of one of the sharks closed around Sarah's arm. She let out a short scream before being pulled beneath the surface, where the water instantly turned red. Motivated by a combination of guilt and desperation, Mark jumped in anyway. Shouting her name, he swam toward the blood-stained water, but Sarah was nowhere to be seen. The sharks had retreated into the depths with their prey, disappearing as swiftly as they had appeared. Mark dug under the water repeatedly in a desperate search, but all he could find was nothing. Jonah, his hands shaking and his face pale, dragged Mark back onto the boat. The two men sat there in stunned silence, feeling as though a physical force was bearing down on them from what had just transpired. Jonah reported the incident over the radio, his voice trembling. A rescue crew showed up within an hour, but they were largely powerless. The following day, divers found Sarah's body, and her wounds verified the horrifying details of the assault. The incident was soon followed by Mark's arrest. The investigation uncovered the specifics of their disagreement and the circumstances surrounding Sarah's downfall. The court found him guilty of manslaughter, despite his insistence that he hadn't intended to hurt her. Many people believed that his 10-year prison sentence was excessively light considering the situation. The tragedy left a scar on the Yasawa Islands. It served as a somber reminder of the perils that lingered beneath the surface of those beautiful waters. The couple's story became a warning to careless tourists after locals whispered about it for years. As for Mark, he would live with the memory of Sarah being pulled under as a result of his fleeting error in judgment for the rest of his life. On a particularly warm and clear day in March 2023, a small team of scuba divers departed from the Australian coastal town of Port Douglas. Their destination was the Great Barrier Reef, one of the most famous diving sites in the world, and a United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization World Heritage Site. The 300-kilometer-long reef along Queensland's coast is home to a stunning array of marine life, including elusive sea turtles and vibrant coral gardens. Some of the top predators of the ocean, such as tiger sharks, bull sharks, and the powerful great white shark, are also known to call it home. Callum Forsby, a seasoned guide and marine enthusiast, led the 5-person dive group, which included Sarah Lemmings, a 32-year-old travel blogger from Vancouver, Canada. The Great Barrier Reef had long been on Sarah's bucket list, and she had spent years chronicling her travels around the world. The majority of the other divers, including Mia Horvath, Callum's assistant guide, were tourists eager for the excitement of up-close views of the reef's kaleidoscopic beauty. The horror that would unfold beneath the surface that day was beyond any of their ability to predict. Callum provided a final safety briefing as the boat anchored near Ribbon Reef 10, a section of coral known for its abundant marine biodiversity. In awe of the underwater spectacle, the group plunged into the water, their fins cutting through the crystal blue. As sunlight filtered down from above, schools of parrotfish swooped past, their fluorescent scales glimmering. Sarah, trailing slightly behind the group with her underwater camera, was mesmerized by the scene. About 25 minutes into the dive, the group arrived at a drop-off where the shallow coral plateau gave way to the deep indigo expanse of open ocean. The atmosphere changed here. It was Callum who initially noticed the abrupt, unsettling silence. The usual flurry of fish activity had vanished, replaced by an eerie quiet. With his years of diving experience, he could tell something wasn't right as he scanned the water. Then he saw it. A great white shark, nearly 5 meters long, emerged from the blue abyss. Its gray upper body stood out sharply against its pale underbelly, and its dead black eyes fixed on the group. Although uncommon in this area of the reef, great whites were not unheard of. As he evaluated the situation, Callum's heart pounded. Instead of circling as they sometimes do out of curiosity, the shark was heading straight for them. Sarah, preoccupied with taking pictures of a large brain coral nearby, was unaware of how close the shark was getting. The predator moved quickly and deliberately, closing the distance to within 15 meters in a matter of seconds. It was already too late when Sarah looked back, with its enormous jaws clamping down on her right leg. The great white sprang forward. The force of the attack sent her regulator flying out of her mouth, and her camera plunged into the abyss. The group's response was quick but disorganized. Callum sprang into action, signaling for the others to ascend to the surface. Mia, his assistant, began guiding the panicked divers upward while Callum swam toward Sarah, who was now being dragged downward by the shark's powerful thrashing. Blood clouded the water, reducing visibility and adding to the terror of the moment. Callum reached for the dive knife strapped to his thigh, his movements precise despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Slashing at the shark's rough, sandpaper-like skin, he swam toward it. The animal was startled, though the blade didn't penetrate deeply. Sarah was freed by the shark, her body starting to float upward, her leg a mangled mess of torn flesh and shredded wetsuit. Callum took Sarah by the arms, using all of his strength to kick her toward the surface. The climb felt excruciatingly slow, but at last they emerged from the water to see the dive boat racing toward them. Two of the divers helped drag Sarah aboard after Mia had already warned the crew. Her face was pallid, her breathing labored, and the severity of her wounds was unmistakable. To stop the bleeding, a makeshift tourniquet was fashioned from a dive belt as the boat sped back to shore. Upon arrival in Port Douglas, a medical helicopter was already waiting. Surgeons at Cairns Hospital spent hours working to save Sarah's leg after she was airlifted there. The scars from the attack would follow Sarah for the rest of her life, and she endured months of physical therapy, although they were able to prevent amputation. Her travel blog, once filled with stories of her adventures around the globe, shifted focus to chronicling her recovery and the psychological toll of surviving a shark attack. The incident attracted widespread media attention, sparking an investigation into shark behavior in the Great Barrier Reef. Experts speculated that the great white shark may have ventured further into the reef system than usual due to anomalous weather patterns or shifts in ocean currents, contributing to the rare encounter. The attack prompted more stringent regulations for local diving tours, including the requirement for shark deterrent equipment and improved safety procedures for open water dives. Callum Forsby was hailed as a hero for his courage and quick thinking during the incident. While he remained a dive guide, he became an advocate for educating people on shark behavior, emphasizing how rare such attacks were despite their terrifying nature. Sarah Lemming's life was profoundly altered by the attack. Although she continued her recovery journey, the scars, both physical and psychological, remained a constant reminder of the harrowing experience. The incident reshaped her perspective on life and her future travel plans, as she navigated the challenge of moving forward after such a traumatic event. While Sarah never set foot in the ocean again, she found a new purpose in raising awareness about ocean conservation and the delicate balance of marine ecosystems. She often reflected on the irony that the same ocean that had nearly taken her life was also one of the planet's most vital and fragile resources. The Great Barrier Reef remained as beautiful and mysterious as ever, a place where wonder and danger existed side by side. For those who ventured into its depths, Sarah's story served as a haunting reminder of the unpredictable power of nature and the need for a deeper respect for the ocean's complexity and the creatures that inhabit it. In October 2024, Hawaii's North Shore hosted the annual Titan Surfing Championship, a prestigious event that drew elite athletes from around the globe. Among the competitors was Mike Drenham, a 28-year-old surfer renowned for his daring techniques and relentless determination. Thousands of spectators gathered to witness surfers tackle the massive waves at the iconic Banzai Pipeline, a location known for its challenging surf. The North Shore, famous for its big wave breaks, also had a reputation for shark sightings, especially during times when larger fish like sharks migrated through the area. The combination of fierce waves and a lurking predator presence added to the mystique of the championship, where every wave could be a test of not just skill, but survival. Perfect waves and clear skies marked the start of the day. In the crystal clear but erratic waters, surfers like Mike were eager to show off. The event went ahead as planned, despite rumors that sharks had been active recently. Drones and patrol boats were among the safety precautions in place, and organizers had received assurances from marine experts that the risks were low. During the quarterfinal round, Mike was in his element, skillfully negotiating the tall waves. His style, a blend of precision and boldness, made him a crowd favorite. As he carved through a particularly massive wave, a shadow loomed beneath him, unnoticed in the adrenaline-filled chaos. Unexpectedly, a great white shark nearly 12 feet long rushed upward. Mike was pulled from his surfboard and into the depths when it struck his left leg with a terrifying amount of force. Gasps and shouts echoed through the crowd, causing panic among the onlookers. When they saw Mike struggling, other surfers, who were initially oblivious to the seriousness of the situation, stopped in the middle of their race. Even though the pain was excruciating, Mike fought to stay conscious underwater. Floating nearby with his surfboard attached to his ankle, he instinctively reached for it and repeatedly slammed it against the shark's muzzle. The predator was briefly startled by the blows and let go, but it circled back, its icy, predatory eyes fixed on him. Safety personnel rushed into action from the shore. A group of lifeguards launched jet skis, and competitors, including rookie surfer Kanoa Sutherland and seasoned surfer Aaron Bexler, paddled frantically in Mike's direction. Kanoa got to him first, took hold of his arm, and assisted him in getting on his board. Blood clouded the water, intensifying the urgency of their efforts. The shark made another pass, but Aaron arrived just in time, using his surfboard to create a barrier. Together, they managed to position Mike across two boards while paddling toward the shore. The other surfers formed a protective semicircle, their movements deliberate to avoid provoking further aggression from the shark. On the beach, paramedics were already prepared. Mike was rapidly stabilized, and oxygen and a tourniquet were applied to his leg. Mike was in pain, but he was still conscious, his expression a mixture of surprise and appreciation, as he was carried to an awaiting ambulance. The crowd, which had been frozen in terror, burst into cheers. Mike needed extensive surgery due to the severity of his injury. Doctors subsequently disclosed that his life was likely saved by his prompt reaction and the efforts of his fellow surfers. However, the attack put a stop to his championship run and highlighted the harsh reality that Mike's surfing career was over. While the damage to his leg was not life-threatening, it was enough to impair the strength and dexterity required for professional surfing. Despite increased security, the championship continued in the days following the attack. Organizers sent out more patrols and drones, and specialists spoke about shark behavior and ocean safety. Mike's incident sparked a broader conversation about the risks surfers face in shark-prone waters. Some athletes called for stricter safety measures, while others argued that such risks were inherent to the sport. Mike, recuperating in a hospital in Honolulu, handled the situation with a mix of humor and introspection. He told guests that he had finally gotten a bite of fame, just not the one he wanted. He did, however, also use the occasion to promote greater awareness of and harmony with sharks. In response to the attack, state officials extended shark monitoring programs along the entire Hawaiian coastline. To reduce human-shark encounters, researchers collaborated with local communities and examined migration patterns. Mike's story, on the other hand, serves as a warning about the unpredictable forces of nature and the resilience of the human spirit. Mike's competitive surfing days were over, but he found new meaning in coaching and sharing his stories. His story inspired admiration and caution, and he continued to be a respected figure in the surfing community. The North Shore, with its unparalleled waves and wild splendor, continued to be a place where dangers and dreams met, as they had for Mike Drenham on that fateful October day. Surfers flocked to the immaculate beaches of False Bay, bringing energy to Cape Town, South Africa, on the morning of April 12, 2024. False Bay was a hunting ground for apex predators that lurked beneath the surface, and a haven for surfers, thanks to its stunning scenery and steady waves. Great white sharks have long been known to frequent the bay directly east of the Cape Peninsula. The lure of flawless waves kept surfers returning despite repeated warnings and sporadic sightings. Surfers like Paul Johnson were among them. Paul, an expatriate from Perth, Australia, 39 years old, has lived in Cape Town for the past 10 years. He was a seasoned surfer, well known in the area for his bold maneuvers and easygoing demeanor. Paul got to the beach shortly after sunrise that morning. Unusually calm waves rolled in clear, glassy sets in the water. In addition to his longtime surfing partner, Declan Venter, a local with sun-bleached hair and a deep tan, he greeted his friends. The topic of discussion as the group got dressed was the recent shark alerts from marine patrols. Declan made light of the fact that people always exaggerated the danger, saying he had been surfing these waters for 20 years and had never come across anything. Paul gave a nod of agreement, but he couldn't get rid of a nagging doubt. The group paddled to the break by mid-morning. With the sun bathing the bay in a golden glow, the water was chilly yet inviting. To see the bigger sets rolling in, Paul moved farther out. Unaware that something enormous and ancient was observing him from below, he sat on his board and looked out over the horizon. False Bay was well known for its waves, but it was also known for being close to Seal Island, a rocky outcrop that was home to many Cape fur seals. Great white sharks were drawn to this natural buffet, especially when they were hunting at their best. According to marine biologists, these waters have some of the highest concentrations of great white sharks in the world. To avoid detection until it was too late, sharks frequently patrolled the bay's murky depths. A clean right-hander carried Paul efficiently toward the shore. It was his first wave of the day. With his heart racing, he paddled back out, ready for the next challenge. His laughter reverberated over the water as Declan and the others supported him from a distance. But the ocean abruptly became uncannily still as Paul waited for the next wave. Paul was unaware that a 16-foot great white shark that weighed close to 2,000 pounds was approaching. It had been circling the area for hours, attracted by the slight fish scent carried by the current and the rhythmic splashes of surfers paddling. As ambush predators, sharks use deception and accuracy to capture their prey. Paul was the ideal target for this one. From the darkness, the shark rushed up with frightful speed. Just as Paul started to paddle for another wave, its enormous body pierced the surface. He flew off his board due to the force of the impact, and his body hit the water with a sickening thud. The shark's jaws clamped down on his abdomen before he could get his bearings. The bite was catastrophic. Blood leaked into the water from a gaping wound created by rows of serrated teeth, tearing through bone, muscle, and flesh. The sea was turned a frothy red by the shark's fierce thrashing and powerful tail. Though his friends on the shore witnessed everything, Paul's scream was muffled by the crashing waves. Watching the water surrounding Paul burst with movement, Declan froze in horror. The shark was not yet done. For a brief moment, it let go of Paul before lunging once more, this time at his lower body. Its teeth sank into his legs, breaking bones and severing arteries. Paul tried in vain to defend himself against the predator's overwhelming strength. He was drawn beneath the surface as its enormous body twisted. Declan and the others could only observe from the shore. The surfers still in the water panicked and frantically paddled to safety. As the situation became apparent, beachgoers screamed while lifeguards sounded the alarm. Paul's vision blurred underwater as shock and blood loss took hold. The shark, its instincts satiated, let him go one last time. His mutilated body floated lifelessly in the crimson-streaked water before vanishing into the depths. Minutes later, rescue boats arrived, but it was too late. A few hours later, Paul's body washed up near a rocky inlet. At first, identifying him was difficult due to the severity of his injuries. Only after matching his personal belongings to those found near the surf spot did authorities confirm his identity. The local community was shaken as word of the attack spread quickly. Many surfers who frequented False Bay vowed never to return to the water. The attack also reignited debate over shark conservation versus human safety. Some argued that people were encroaching on the shark's natural habitat, while others called for increased culling efforts. Declan, who witnessed the attack, struggled to cope with the trauma. Ultimately, he gave up surfing, unable to escape the memory of his friend's final moments. A week after Paul's death, the local surfing community tossed flowers into the sea in memory of a man who had loved the ocean despite its dangers. Experts made assumptions about what could have caused the attack. While some thought it was a case of territorial aggression, others suggested the shark thought Paul was a seal. For whatever reason, the incident was a sobering reminder of the unpredictability of the ocean. The beaches of False Bay remained eerily silent for several months. A sense of caution and fear had taken the place of the once thriving surf scene. The name Paul Johnson came to represent the dangers of surfing in shark-infested waters. Both residents and visitors recounted his story, which served as a warning about the conflict between humans and the natural world. Ultimately, Paul's passing served as a sobering reminder of the ocean's dual nature, its cruelty and its beauty. The memory of April 12, 2024, a terrifying testament to the power of the predator that took his life, lingered over those who still surfed at False Bay. Kaikoura is a small seaside town on the eastern coast of the South Island of New Zealand. It is well known for its dramatic cliffs, rich marine life, and the chilly, choppy Pacific Ocean. Tragic events occurred here on June 22, 2023. While on what should have been a typical fishing trip, 42-year-old local fisherman Mark Robinson met a grisly end. With its long history as a whaling station and later as a center for ecotourism, Kaikoura had always been a place where people lived side by side with nature's unpredictable forces. Its coastline was teeming with marine life, including enormous sperm whales and playful dolphins, which attracted tourists worldwide. On the other hand, great white sharks were more dangerous predators that lurked in the colder, deeper waters. Although shark sightings were not unusual in the region, deadly encounters were extremely rare, which made Mark Robinson's passing all the more shocking. Mark was a lifelong resident of Kaikoura. Described by his neighbors as a solitary yet hard-working man, he had spent much of his life fishing the waters he knew well. On the morning of June 22nd, he set out alone in his small fishing vessel, the Sea Wanderer, a simple 18-foot boat. He launched from the rocky beach just as the sun rose, the chilly winter air stinging his face. Planning to spend the day catching blue cod and tarakihi, two of the area's most sought-after fish, he headed into familiar waters. There were clouds in the sky that morning, and the sea was icy cold, a sign of winter storms to come. Mark had gone to sea for roughly 4 kilometers, which was far enough to stay clear of the tourist boats while still being well within the fishing grounds. Even experienced fishermen like Mark occasionally felt uneasy in this area because of the deep and dark water. Casting his lines and bringing in a small but consistent catch, he concentrated on his work. He had packed his cooler full of fish by midday. That's when things started to go wrong. One of his bait boxes had come loose and was sliding toward the boat's edge as Mark readjusted his lines. Although it was a minor annoyance, Mark was meticulous about his equipment. To secure the box, he leaned over the side without noticing that his weight had moved too much. A sudden swell that slightly tilted the boat threw him off balance. Mark suddenly fell into the icy water and overboard. The cold hit him like a sledgehammer, robbing his lungs of their breath. It was impossible to climb back aboard the Sea Wanderer without help, due to its slight rocking and drifting just out of reach. Although Mark could swim, his strength was rapidly depleted by the icy water and the weight of his bulky clothing. He called out for assistance even though he knew no one was around to hear him. His actions on the boat had drawn an unwanted observer, but Mark was unaware. Attracted by the smell of fish and the vibrations of his movements in the water, a 14-foot great white shark, likely a female given its size, was circling the area. Even though they didn't usually hunt people, white sharks were opportunistic hunters, and Mark's flailing in the water was more than enough to attract the shark's attention. The attack was unexpected. Mark was fighting to stay afloat for 1 second, and then a tremendous force hit him from below and pulled him under the water. The shark's jaws clamped down on his leg, its sharp teeth effortlessly slicing through bone and flesh. When Mark's survival instincts took over, he fought valiantly, flailing and kicking in an attempt to get away. In response, the shark shook him violently, thrashing its strong body in the water until his leg was ripped off. The water was hazy with blood, leaving a chilling crimson bloom, which was where the attack occurred. The shark's assault was relentless in its ferocity. It momentarily let go of Mark before striking him once more, this time burying its teeth in his torso. He was nearly dead from the force of the bite, which crushed his ribs and punctured his organs. Mark was pulled farther into the icy black abyss by the shark as his body went limp. The water muffled his screams so nobody could hear them. A local fisherman, Fergus Treadley, spotted the Sea Wanderer adrift a few hours later. At first, Fergus, a wiry man in his 60s with decades of boating experience, thought Mark had just drowned after falling overboard. He didn't realize something much worse had happened until he noticed the bloodstains on the side of the boat and the strewn fishing gear. He quickly organized a search after radioing the local authorities. For hours, a search and rescue team under the command of Senior Constable Elwyn Hargrove searched the area. In the end, Hargrove discovered Mark's body, or what was left of it, washed up on a secluded island. Mark was horribly disfigured, with his right arm severed at the shoulder, his left leg gone, and his torso mangled. The severity of the wounds left even the most experienced officers visibly shaken, even though the injuries were consistent with a shark attack. Kaikoura was a close-knit community, and news of the attack quickly spread. Mark's passing rekindled long-standing concerns about the perils that lurk in the ocean, as it was the first fatal shark attack in the area in more than 20 years. Many local fishermen who had known Mark personally started to take extra precautions like fishing in groups and staying away from shark-active areas. Others even advocated for culling programs to lower the shark population. But marine conservationists objected, claiming that such actions were detrimental to the ecosystem. Government officials also took action as a result of the incident. The Department of Conservation announced plans to increase shark monitoring in the area through drones and tagging programs to better understand shark behavior and lower the likelihood of future attacks. Although many people applauded these actions, they didn't do much to lessen Mark's family and friends' immediate grief. The death of Mark Robinson served as a sobering reminder of how erratic and frequently cruel the ocean can be. His passing served as a sobering reminder of the thin line separating tragedy and coexistence in Kaikoura, a town that has always coexisted peacefully with the sea. To those who knew him, Mark represented the dangers faced by people who decided to live on the water rather than merely being a victim of circumstance. His life, which was characterized by his love for the ocean despite its darkest depths, would live on in memory not only for how he passed away. Bright sunshine greeted the coastal town of Mendocino, California, on May 6, 2023. The town was well liked by families looking for a break from the bustle of the city because of its rocky cliffs, azure waters, and charming cottages by the sea. Patriarch George Mitchell, his son Thomas Mitchell, and his grandson Benjamin Mitchell set out on what was supposed to be a day of seaside bonding. Known for its abundant marine life and tranquil fishing spots, the trio selected a remote cove just north of Point Arena Lighthouse. Although occasional shark sightings have been reported, it has grown to be a beloved spot for recreational fishing over the years. However, the family felt secure about their outing because no attacks had been reported in decades. George, a retired engineer at the age of 68, was passionate about imparting to his grandson the skills he had developed over the years. At 42, Thomas inherited his father's passion for the great outdoors, and 14-year-old Ben eagerly followed suit, showing off his childlike excitement with each cast of his fishing line. They laughed and reeled in small catches for hours under the warm sun, not realizing the predator lurking beneath the waves. The water surface was abnormally calm by midday. Standing at the edge of the rocky outcrop, George skillfully threw his line into the deep blue. Abruptly, the peace was broken. A great white shark, thought to be more than 15 feet long, lunged from the depths near George, causing a huge splash. The scene was later described as shockingly fast and violent by witnesses who were watching from a nearby location. George was dragged into the water with terrifying force as the shark's strong jaws clamped down on his leg. Thomas's reaction was automatic. He dropped his equipment and dove into the water, intent on saving his father. When the shark exhibited an aggression that puzzled experts, it turned its attention to Thomas, and the mayhem intensified. It struck with such accuracy that onlookers began to wonder if the predator had altered its behavior to target people specifically. As Thomas fought to fend off the relentless shark, the water churned crimson. Ben had to make a terrifying decision while perched on the rocks. Despite being only 14, he displayed immense bravery and loyalty. Reaching for a nearby life preserver, he dove into the water to reach his family. However, the shark's instincts were relentless. It struck Ben in a final terrible blow, pulling him beneath the surface before he could reach his father and grandfather. When hikers who had witnessed the tragedy alerted local authorities, the water was eerily still. Only shattered clothing and fishing gear remained as grim evidence after a Coast Guard team searched, but the predator had vanished. Rescue crews searched the area for the next few hours and found the family's partial remains. The great white shark, however, escaped capture and vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Marine biologists and shark behaviorists were called to investigate the incident. Dr. Evelyn Hart, a leading expert in shark behavior, closely examined the circumstances. She noted that while shark attacks on humans are typically rare and often the result of mistaken identity, this predator displayed unusual patterns. Its repeated attacks and apparent targeting of multiple individuals in quick succession were behaviors not commonly seen in great whites. Speculation ran high among both locals and experts. Some suggested that environmental factors such as warming ocean temperatures and declining fish populations might have driven the shark closer to shore and made it more aggressive. Others proposed that the shark could have been injured or sick, leading to erratic behavior. The attack shocked the small Mendocino community regardless of its cause. Following the incident, authorities posted warning signs along the coastline and permanently closed the cove. Hundreds of people attended the Mitchell family memorial services in Sacramento, where they were born and raised. It was said that George, Thomas, and Ben were known for being a close-knit family. Shark conservation and human interaction with marine environments became more widely discussed as a result of the tragedy. Environmental organizations stressed the significance of protecting shark populations, which are vital to preserving the equilibrium of ocean ecosystems, despite some calling for the predator to be eradicated. Dr. Hart urged a focus on education and research to understand better and coexist with these apex predators, warning against demonizing the species. For those who saw it, the incident continued to haunt them years later. Both thrill-seekers and somber tourists were drawn to the cove, which represented the erratic power of nature. Documentaries and articles have told the Mitchell family's story, which served as a moving reminder of the dangers and benefits of going into the wild. The shark's fate and motivations were unknown because it was never seen again. Its attack on 3 generations of the Mitchell family marked a dark chapter in the history of California's coastline, regardless of whether it was motivated by instinct, desperation, or something more mysterious. The assault on May 6, 2023, was a sobering reminder of the strength and unpredictable nature of the natural world. For those who were there, the memory was still clear. A terrifying illustration of how a sunny, ideal day could devolve into a tragic and chaotic scene. Yet amid the grief and fear, the incident also sparked a renewed commitment to understanding and respecting the ocean, ensuring that future generations could safely enjoy its wonders. The sun shone brightly on October 2, 2022, as the azure waters of Biscayne Bay glimmered under the midday light. Located off the coast of Miami, Florida, the bay had long been a playground for the rich and adventurous. Its waters, usually calm and inviting, were a popular destination for yacht parties and weekend escapes. Miami's reputation as a vibrant city of luxury and leisure was on full display that weekend, with dozens of boats floating on the bay. Among them was a sleek private yacht named Seabound Mirage. The vessel, a symbol of modern opulence, was hired by a group of friends to celebrate their long-overdue reunion. The group consisted of 7 individuals, all in their late 20s and early 30s, each with unique personalities and distinct lives. They had known each other since college but had drifted apart over the years due to career relationships and life's many distractions. At the heart of the gathering was Marcus Abernathy, a 30-year-old software engineer with a penchant for thrill-seeking. Marcus had organized the trip as a way to reconnect with old friends and escape the monotony of his desk job. Joining him were his girlfriend Clara Torrington, a marketing executive, Theo Drummond, an aspiring filmmaker, Priya Shekhar, a pediatric nurse, Dominic Dom Vash, an investment banker, and siblings Lila and Bennett Keegan, both teachers. The morning began with laughter and light-hearted banter as the group boarded the yacht. In pursuit of adventure and seclusion, they ventured farther into the bay and away from the congested shores. They received assurances from Captain Gregor, an accomplished sailor, that they were in safe waters. It was renowned for its strong marine life, pristine depths, and absence of large predators. It was the ideal setting for a memorable celebration. The initial hours went by without incident. Drinks were plentiful, music was blasting from portable speakers, and the friends talked about their college years. As Gregor cooked lunch on the yacht's outdoor grill, the aroma of grilled seafood filled the air. Everything appeared ideal, a moment of unbridled happiness and friendship. But as the afternoon wore on, the picturesque scene took a sinister turn. Marcus chose to cool off in the water after feeling the effects of the Florida heat and too many cocktails. Clara protested a little, but he still climbed onto the yacht's diving platform. He cheered loudly and jumped into the water, making a splash that caught everyone's eye. For an instant, everything appeared to be all right. Marcus's head came up out of the water, his face glowing with excitement. To get the others to join him, he waved at them. However, as the group clinked glasses and laughed, a sudden terrifying scream broke the joyous atmosphere. Theo was the first to respond, racing to the yacht's edge. The sight chilled him to the bone. Around Marcus in the water was a shadowy dark figure. Its terrifying speed and accuracy made it obvious that it was a predator, a bull shark. As his friends rushed to respond, panic broke out on the yacht. Desperate, Clara screamed Marcus's name, her voice breaking. A life preserver was snatched by Gregor, an experienced sailor who was unprepared for the situation, and he tossed it in Marcus's direction. But before anyone could take any further action, the shark attacked. Marcus was brutally pulled underwater as its strong jaws clamped down on his leg. As the water turned red, the group watched in horror. Before being pulled beneath once more, Marcus briefly reappeared, his face a mask of pain and terror. His cries reverberated in their ears, serving as a terrifying reminder of their powerlessness. Despite being shaken, Gregor made an effort to keep his composure. He retrieved the emergency radio from the yacht and informed the Coast Guard of their location, requesting assistance. In the meantime, in the vain hope that Marcus would surface, Dom and Bennett tried to locate him in the water. Lila's voice was shaking as she sobbed that he was gone. Priya, who typically remained composed under duress, was stunned, and her medical education was useless in the face of such a violent and abrupt incident. The ensuing minutes seemed like hours. Fear and grief paralyzed the group, causing them to gaze only at the water. When the Coast Guard finally showed up, their speedboat rushed through the waves. Armed with harpoons and safety equipment, divers dove into the water, but their efforts were in vain. It was evident that Marcus had died from his wounds by the time his body was recovered. Anarchy and grief characterized the aftermath. The group was escorted back to the shore where they were met by local authorities and medical personnel. Each of them was questioned extensively about the events leading up to the attack. The authorities, puzzled by the incident, speculated that the shark might have been drawn to the area by unusual activity or an unseen food source. Although they are known to swim in shallow waters, bull sharks hardly ever attack people unless they are provoked or confused. The tragedy deeply scarred all those involved. Tormented by grief and guilt, Clara left the group because she couldn't handle being reminded of her loss. Theo, who had captured much of the day on his camera, deleted the footage, unable to relive the horrifying moments. Priya sought counseling to cope with the trauma, while Lila and Bennett leaned on each other for support. Dom, ever the pragmatist, became an advocate for marine safety awareness and was determined to prevent similar tragedies. The story of the shark attack made headlines, sparking debates about the risks of recreational activities in open waters. Experts weighed in, offering theories about the unusual behavior of the bull shark. Some blamed climate change for altering marine ecosystems, while others pointed to human activity disrupting the natural balance. Whatever the cause, the incident served as a chilling reminder of the ocean's unpredictable nature. Months later, a memorial was held for Marcus at his favorite park in Miami. The remaining friends gathered to honor his memory, sharing stories of his adventurous spirit and infectious laughter. While the pain of his loss remained, they found solace in each other, vowing to cherish the bonds they had almost let slip away. The Seabound Mirage was sold shortly after the incident. Its new owner was unaware of the tragic event that had unfolded on its decks. As for Biscayne Bay, it continued to attract visitors, its beauty undiminished but its reputation tinged with an air of caution. The once inviting waters now offered a sobering lesson. Despite its overwhelming power, nature demanded respect. The incident became a turning point for Marcus's friends, a stark reminder of life's fragility and the strength of friendship in the face of adversity. Morning of July 25, 2022, the coastal town of Port Gregory in Western Australia bustled with excitement. Known for its picturesque pink lake and tranquil shores, the town was hosting the wedding of Brian Foster and Lydia Merrick. The private beach chosen for the reception was a secluded slice of paradise with soft white sands and clear waters lapping gently against the shore. From the ceremony held under a floral arch to the reception decor inspired by the ocean, the entire day had been carefully planned. Unaware of the tragedy that would soon transpire, guests were awestruck by the setting's beauty. Sydney-born software developer Brian Foster, 34, was well-liked for his friendly demeanor and spirit of adventure. Lydia Merrick, a 32-year-old marine photographer, was as passionate about the sea as Brian was. Since their relationship was based on their shared passion, having a wedding by the sea was an obvious choice. Friends and family, many of whom had traveled from far and wide to witness the couple's union, had celebrated their love story. The reception peaked as the sun sank below the horizon, bathing the beach in a golden glow. A live band performed gentle tunes while guests socialized and laughter reverberated. Every moment was documented by the couple's photographer, Everett Vaughn, for the live stream that was aired to friends and family who couldn't make it in person. Key members of the wedding party, Lydia's childhood friend Serena Halls and Brian's best friend Callum Vey, were among the guests. After the customary cake-cutting ceremony, Brian proposed a festive swim. The idea struck a chord with the enthusiastic audience despite being impromptu. A few guests and the couple waded into the shallows together. Playfully splashing each other in the warm water caused laughter to spread throughout the group. The remaining guests, preferring to stay dry, cheered from the shore or recorded videos to share later. And then suddenly the calm broke. Near Brian, a strong splash erupted, accompanied by a shadow below the surface. Initially, the guests thought it was a playful dolphin, which was a common sight in these waters. But in a matter of seconds, the terrible truth was revealed. A great white shark, thought to be more than 3 meters long, broke through the water and hit Brian with incredible force. As the waves dragged Brian under, panic broke out. As the guests struggled to understand the chaos, Lydia screamed, frozen in shock. A few others, including Callum and Everett, hurried into the water to try to get to Brian, but the shark's strength was superior. The water was tinged with blood as the shark thrashed, pulling its victim farther out from the coast. The nightmare was captured on livestream. At first, viewers thought it was a dramatic stunt, but they soon realized the terrible truth. Frantic messages calling for the authorities to step in erupted on social media. At the same time, the mood on the beach turned hopeless. Despite their fear, others attempted to console Lydia as she fell to her knees and began to sob uncontrollably. After the initial distress call, emergency personnel arrived in a matter of minutes. Rescue crews and lifeguards sent out boats to look for Brian, but the shark had already disappeared into the ocean. To assess the situation, marine experts were called in and the beach was roped off. Shark attacks were uncommon, according to local marine biologist Dr. Theo Gramlich, but the region's growing tourist appeal may have disturbed the natural behavior of marine life. The search for Brian continued late into the night, but yielded only fragments of his torn wetsuit. Authorities later confirmed his death, marking the event as one of the most harrowing shark attacks in the region's history. Once a site of joy, the private beach turned into a solemn place with grief smearing its immaculate sands. Port Gregory struggled to deal with the fallout in the days after the tragedy. There were signs along the shore alerting people to shark activity, but the beach was still closed. Scientists and local fishermen worked together to use tagging tools and drones to track the shark. The predator continued to elude them despite their efforts. In a private service in Sydney, Brian's loved ones lamented his passing. Grief-stricken Lydia retreated from public life. Weeks later, she conveyed her grief and underlined the importance of raising awareness of marine safety in a statement. What had once been a happy occasion had turned into a warning. Experts discussed the balance between tourism and wildlife conservation, and local authorities thought about tightening rules for beach activities. In addition, the tragedy sparked a wave of support for Lydia and the Foster family, with money pouring in to help with recovery and finance shark research. Port Gregory started to recover over time. The community organized an annual event to raise awareness of marine safety in remembrance of Brian. Despite being deeply affected by the event, Lydia took comfort in her photography, focusing on capturing the beauty and peril of the ocean. Her photographs acted as a reminder of the sea's dual character, as a place of wonder and uncertainty. The story of Brian Foster's tragic end lingered in the minds of all who heard it. It was a chilling reminder that even in moments of joy, life's unpredictability could strike without warning. California's Pismo Beach coastline is renowned for its expansive open spaces and scenic beauty, drawing surfers and tourists from all over the world. The miles-long beach tied with cliffs and the occasional tide pool was situated just south of San Luis Obispo County. Many surfers had successfully navigated the strong waves that swept along the shores of the small town in 2023. Because of its consistent surf breaks, which were perfect for novices and experienced surfers alike, surfers flocked to this area. However, on December 8th, a sequence of peculiar occurrences took place that would be recalled for years. For more than 10 years, 27-year-old professional surfer Jake Holloway has been riding the waves here. Jake had made a name for himself in the California surfing community. Thanks to his sharp skills and fearless attitude, his reputation was rising, and his competitive career was taking off. But Jake couldn't have been more prepared for what was going to happen on that fateful December day. A slight breeze blew across the water. The swells looked promising, and the ocean that morning seemed calm. When Jake paddled out into the surf, the sun was low in the sky, bathing the waves in a warm golden glow. He liked the solitude of the open water, so it was not unusual for him to be by himself. Pismo Beach was known as a peaceful location where the waves provided seclusion, but also occasionally peril. In the morning, Jake managed to catch a couple of respectable waves cutting through the water with ease and accuracy. This place gave him a sense of invincibility because of the vastness of the ocean, the salty air, and the rhythm of the waves. But that sense of invincibility would soon be shattered. Jake felt something wholly out of place as he paddled for another wave. The still swells were momentarily disturbed by a shift in the water surrounding him. Before he could respond, a tremendous force came from below, causing him to fall from his board. It all happened so quickly that Jake had no time to comprehend the nature of the attack. Jake was flung into the waves, confused. A sharp sting and searing pain shot through Jake's left leg as the enormous creature's teeth sank into him. He gasped, trying to regain control, but the pain was overwhelming. The shadow of the beast loomed just beneath the surface as Jake scrambled to get back on his board, panic setting in. It wasn't a single bite. The shark was circling him. He could feel it. Jake immediately recognized how bad the situation was. It was a great white. Though he had prepared for scenarios like this, there was no protocol for dealing with an attack of this relentless intensity. As the shark struck once more, this time digging its teeth into Jake's leg, his breath became more rapid. Jake lost his equilibrium due to the force of the bite. The blood from his wounds was visible in the water as he screamed in agony, attracting more predators. However, using instinct and sheer determination, he was able to get himself onto his surfboard and started rowing frantically in the direction of the coast. He only focused on getting to safety and did not look back. The shark wasn't finished, though. As it swam in time with his movements, the predator's dark outline could be seen just below the surface of the water. Jake paddled harder each time, and the shark kept up with him. The shark would lunge forward, delivering another vicious bite whenever Jake thought he had gained some distance. Despite the excruciating pain, Jake remained determined. His mind raced as he paddled with every last bit of strength. Shark attacks typically last only a short time, driven by curiosity or hunger, but this one felt different. The shark wasn't just attacking, it was hunting. Jake's body ached, but he pushed through the pain. The fight for survival became a test of endurance, and he was still far from the shore. He could predict the waves and read the ocean, but he had never encountered a creature that wouldn't relent. His arms burned with fatigue as he neared the shallows, the water around him hazy and bloodied. The beach appeared in the distance, a tiny glimmer of hope. With the last of his strength, he pushed forward, but the shark continued to pursue him, staying right behind. Jake finally made contact with the sand below as his board hit the shore. He was so close. With one final desperate push, he reached the shallows, where the water was only knee-deep. His legs gave out as he collapsed onto the sand, struggling to breathe, and he staggered onto the beach. But the shark wasn't done. It lingered just off the coast, circling in the deeper waters. The sound of the waves crashing against the beach grew louder to Jake. Onlookers from the neighboring cliffs watched the entire ordeal, and soon a group of beachgoers rushed to his side. They called for help, and within moments, paramedics arrived. Jake was quickly loaded onto a stretcher, his body battered and bloodied, his leg torn apart by the shark's bites. He was rushed to a nearby hospital where doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize him. Jake survived the attack, but the recovery process was long and painful. He was left with deep scars, both physical and mental. The doctors were baffled by the shark's unusual behavior. Experts on marine life speculated that the shark might have been a rogue drawn to Jake's movements, or perhaps it had been in a state of heightened aggression due to environmental factors like water temperature or food scarcity. Despite the attacks, Jake never returned to the water in the same way. Though his body healed, his trust in the ocean had been irrevocably shaken. Pismo Beach, once a place of solitude and sport, had become a symbol of the terror that lurked just beneath the surface. The shark, however, seemed to disappear as mysteriously as it had appeared. Though many feared it would strike again, the waters gradually calmed. Jake's ordeal raised alarms among local surfers, who became more cautious in the days and months that followed. Some even stopped surfing at Pismo Beach altogether, opting for less dangerous spots. Jake Holloway's story, though a tale of survival, turned into a cautionary one for others, reminding them that the ocean, for all its beauty and allure, could never be fully tamed. Questions still lingered about the shark's unusual behavior, with no answers in sight. Some speculated it was a case of territorial aggression, while others suggested it might have been a reaction to human intrusion into its domain. Regardless of the cause, Jake's life was forever altered. His story would be shared among surfers for years to come, serving as a chilling reminder of the ocean's unpredictability and the creatures that dwell within it. Despite the ordeal, Jake continued with his career, carrying a healthy respect for the darker mysteries of the ocean. His near miss on that fateful December day served as a continual reminder that even the most seasoned surfers could not escape the perils that lurk beneath the surface. On a clear morning in July 2020, the United States Coast Guard patrol team set out from the harbor at Cape Cod, the Atlantic shimmering under a cloudless sky. Their mission was routine, a search and rescue sweep along the coastline, prompted by reports of a missing recreational boater. The patrol boat, a sleek 47-foot vessel painted in crisp white and orange, sliced through the gentle swells as seagulls wheeled overhead. Lieutenant Sarah Johnson, 31 years old and one of the most experienced officers aboard, stood near the starboard side. Her short brown hair was damp from the salty mist that clung to the morning air. She had spent years navigating these waters, braving fierce storms and dangerous rescues. This morning felt deceptively calm, the sea's surface smooth and inviting. As the boat slowed near a narrow channel flanked by rocky outcrops, the crew prepared to deploy depth markers and search equipment. Sarah, ever meticulous, leaned over the side to get a better view of the water's clarity and assess the boat's positioning. Beneath the surface, dark patches flickered, likely schools of fish moving in synchronized patterns. The Atlantic was teeming with life that time of year. Lobster traps dotted the coastline, and pods of dolphins often broke through the waves, delighting tourists on whale-watching tours. But it wasn't only the playful marine creatures that called these waters home. Cape Cod had long been a hotspot for great white sharks, their presence increasing in recent years as seal populations surged. Sarah was aware of the danger. Her training had drilled into her the risks of shark encounters, but they were typically distant threats, mere shadows passing beneath the boat. Today, she barely gave it a thought. The boat rocked gently as Sarah knelt, leaning farther over the edge to adjust a depth gauge. The water below gleamed with a deceptive calmness. Her fingers brushed the cold surface. That was when it happened. A sudden surge of water erupted just feet from the boat. The sleek torpedo-shaped body of a great white shark, estimated at over 16 feet long, breached from the depths with terrifying speed. Its gray and white body gleamed in the sunlight, and its jaws, lined with serrated teeth, opened wide. The shark's eyes were black and soulless, fixed on its target. The boat shuddered violently as the shark struck its side with bone-jarring force. Crew members stumbled, grabbing onto railings to avoid being thrown into the water. Equipment clattered across the deck, and the engine sputtered as the vessel tilted precariously. Sarah lost her grip. Time seemed to slow as she plunged into the icy water. Her body was immediately enveloped by the cold, the shock momentarily paralyzing her. She kicked frantically, desperate to surface, but the shark was already upon her. It moved with terrifying precision, a predator built for speed and power. The initial strike was catastrophic. The shark's jaws clamped down on Sarah's right thigh, slicing through muscle and bone with brutal efficiency. Pain exploded through her body, sharp and all-consuming. Her scream was swallowed by the churning water. The crew on the boat sprang into action, throwing ropes and deploying rescue equipment. Sarah thrashed wildly, fighting against the shark's pull as it attempted to drag her deeper. Blood billowed into the water, a crimson cloud that seemed to ignite the shark's frenzy. Desperation surged through her veins. Her instincts, honed by years of survival training, kicked in. She clawed at the shark's rough skin, her fingers slipping against its sandpaper-like texture. The beast thrashed, its powerful tail propelling them in chaotic spirals. Sarah's lungs burnt as she struggled to stay conscious. The world around her blurred into a chaotic swirl of red and blue. She knew she was seconds away from drowning or being torn apart. On the boat, her crewmates fought with equal desperation. One officer managed to loop a rope around Sarah's arm, shouting commands as they heaved with all their strength. The shark, sensing resistance, released its grip momentarily. Blood streamed from Sarah's mangled leg as she was yanked toward the surface. The moment of reprieve was short-lived. The shark circled back, its instincts fully activated by the scent of blood. It lunged again, its jaws snapping inches from Sarah's torso. Her vision dimmed as the pain threatened to pull her into oblivion. With a final, desperate effort, the crew hauled Sarah aboard. Her body hit the deck with a sickening thud, water pouring from her lungs as she gasped for air. Blood pooled beneath her, staining the white surface of the boat. The shark, relentless and enraged, rammed the side of the vessel once more. The boat rocked violently, but the crew managed to stabilize it. They gunned the engine, the propellers churning the water into a frothy spray as they sped away from the attack site. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps, her skin pale and slick with seawater. The crew worked frantically to staunch the bleeding, wrapping tourniquets around her shredded leg. Her eyes fluttered open, the pain etched into every line of her face. The boat raced toward the shore, the coastline a distant blur on the horizon. Every second felt agonizingly long, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on everyone aboard. Sarah was rushed to the nearest hospital where a team of surgeons fought to save her life. Her injuries were catastrophic, but she survived. The attack left her with permanent scars, both physical and psychological. Her leg, irreparably damaged, required extensive reconstruction. The incident made national headlines, and it became a reminder of the unpredictable dangers lurking beneath the surface of the ocean. Experts speculated that the shark's aggression was likely triggered by territorial instincts or dwindling food sources in the region. Sarah's survival was hailed as a miracle, but for her, the memory of the attack was a nightmare she would carry forever. The Atlantic, once a familiar and trusted ally, had revealed its darkest face. And though she eventually returned to duty, the scars on her body and soul remained a testament to the thin line between human mastery and nature's raw, untamed. Keys' azure waters glistened in June 2024 under the unrelenting summer sun. Off Florida's southern coast, this chain of coral islands served as a refuge for travelers, adventurers, and lovers of the ocean. Kayaking had become popular there because of its colorful reefs and serene, shallow waters. One person captivated by its charms that summer was Tomlin Tom Haverstead, a 36-year-old outdoor enthusiast from Asheville, North Carolina. Tom, a seasoned paddler with years of experience kayaking in rivers and seas, decided to head to the Keys alone, drawn by the peace and challenge of navigating its warm, open waters. The incident occurred on a serene, nearly picturesque morning. Tom departed from a small beach near Big Pine Key, a serene location distinguished by its shallow channels and mangroves. The only things he brought were a lightweight paddle, a dry bag filled with water and snacks, and a first aid kit hidden under his seat. Tom intended to spend the day exploring the neighboring sandbars and following the coastline before returning to shore. On that particular day, the water was calm and glassy, showing little sign of the danger below. Although great white sharks were uncommon, marine predators had long been abundant in the Florida Keys. They usually stayed farther north or deeper in the Atlantic because they preferred colder waters. But in recent years, their migration patterns have started to change due to warming ocean temperatures. This had brought them closer to shorelines once considered safe for kayakers and swimmers. Tom, like many others, had read occasional reports of shark sightings but dismissed them as anomalies. After all, he wasn't a novice. He knew how to handle himself on the water. By noon, Tom was about 2 miles offshore, paddling steadily through a shallow stretch where the sandy bottom was visible below. His kayak, a bright orange fiberglass vessel, sliced cleanly through the water. He was admiring the beauty of his surroundings when, without warning, a massive shadow passed beneath him. At first, it was only the dim outline of something big and purposefully moving. Tom stopped his paddle, poised in midair. Before he could react, the water's surface exploded. With tremendous force, the great white shark, estimated to weigh 2,000 pounds and almost 14 feet long, struck the side of the kayak. The fiberglass splintered under its weight as its jaws clamped down on the vessel's edge, producing a sickening crunch. With his paddle spinning out of reach, Tom fell into the water from the impact. He briefly lost all sense of direction while flailing to regain his bearings, the salt water stinging his eyes. When he surfaced, struggling for breath, he saw the shark circling back. A ragged cut from the kayak's broken edge was bleeding on Tom's arm, and the blood leaked into the water. The shark turned back toward him, drawn by the scent. Experts would later refer to the terrifying series of events that ensued as a near-miraculous escape. Tom knew panicking would only make matters worse. Having read enough about shark encounters, he recalled one important rule: avoid acting like prey. Trying to remain calm, Tom kicked hard at his kayak, which was partially overturned and floating a few feet away. With a dorsal fin slicing through the water like a knife, the shark closed the gap more quickly than he had expected. It lunged, but Tom caught his paddle, which was bobbing close by, and swung it as hard as he could. The shark recoiled momentarily, stunned as the blade struck its snout, a sensitive spot for many species. Taking advantage of the momentary respite, Tom managed to haul himself onto the capsized kayak. His mind stayed focused on survival despite his frantic movements and racing heart. Even though the kayak was taking on water and listing significantly to one side, he managed to right it and climb aboard. The shark, however, was not finished. It circled once more, its dark eyes fixed on the struggling kayaker. Each pass brought it closer, and each time, Tom used his paddle to keep it at bay, jabbing and swinging as it approached. No matter what he did, things were getting worse. His injured arm was growing weaker, and the kayak was barely afloat. Tom was aware that his time was running out. With erratic but determined strokes, he paddled toward the far shoreline in desperation. Behind him, blood trailed in the water, a red line he feared would draw more predators. The attacks were halted by pure luck, or possibly the shark's increasing indifference. The great white finally vanished into the depths. Tom didn't wait for it to come back. With his injured arm screaming in protest, he paddled as hard as he could. A local fishing charter run by seasoned veteran Captain Oswald Oz Merrick, who had spent decades navigating the Keys, spotted him about 500 yards offshore. While tracking tarpon in the area, Oz and his deckhand, a young woman named Lena Corbridge, noticed the orange kayak listing dangerously in the water. As they got closer, they saw Tom hunched over, his arm covered in blood, his face white. Oz quickly dragged the injured kayaker on board while Lena stopped the bleeding with basic first aid. After being rushed to a nearby marina, Tom was taken to Lower Keys Medical Center in Key West by ambulance. That evening, he underwent surgery to treat the deep cut on his arm. Later, medical professionals praised his extraordinary calmness throughout the ordeal, stating that it had likely saved his life. The neighborhood was rocked by the attack. Although shark encounters in the Keys were not uncommon, this was the first confirmed great white attack in the region in more than 10 years. Marine biologists attributed the shark's presence to changing migratory patterns and growing human-marine predator overlap. The incident sparked a flurry of discussions among both locals and visitors, raising concerns about the safety of recreational activities in the area. Tom, for his part, came away from the experience alive but shaken. After a week, he returned to North Carolina with his kayak in pieces and his arm in a sling. He acknowledged that he would be staying in calmer waters for some time, but he was already planning to return to the ocean despite the trauma. As one local newspaper described it, Tomlin Haverstead had gazed into death's jaws and paddled away. The assault served as a clear reminder of how unpredictable the ocean can be. For Tom, it was a story of survival, a testament to the power of human resilience in the face of nature's raw fury. The opulent cruise ship Elysium Voyager sailed from Miami, Florida in the summer of 2024, embarking on a week-long journey through the Caribbean's crystal-clear waters. Among the travelers were Jason Hallbridge and his wife Claire Altheon, a couple from Denver, Colorado, celebrating their 10th wedding anniversary. With fine dining, swimming pools, and nightly entertainment, the ship was a floating palace offering every luxury imaginable. Passengers were promised an unforgettable experience, with stops at well-known Caribbean locations like Nassau, Grand Turk, and St. Thomas. The couple, eager for a relaxing vacation, had high hopes for their getaway. Little did they know that the trip would soon take an unexpected turn. The Caribbean's glass-like surface reflected the dazzling constellations above, and the waters were unusually calm that July. The sea's allure had long drawn adventurous souls like Jason and Claire, and it was the ideal setting for a peaceful escape. Having spent years on beach and lakeside vacations, both were proficient swimmers. Yet the ocean held a different kind of power, a vastness that both intimidated and enthralled them. On the third night of the cruise, the ship anchored near the Turks and Caicos island of Providencial, renowned for its vibrant coral reefs and pristine beaches. The tranquil surroundings seemed to promise an idyllic evening, and Jason and Claire were eager to explore the island's waters. It was a perfect opportunity to dive into the beauty of the Caribbean's marine life. Little did they know, this serene paradise would soon be disrupted by an unexpected twist. Jason proposed that they go for a late-night swim after a lavish dinner and several glasses of wine. Earlier in the day, he had been told by a crew member that the waters were safe and brimming with bioluminescent plankton, which would create a stunning, otherworldly display. Always up for a new experience, Claire agreed. The couple made their way to the small swimming platform at the stern of the ship, a place often used for snorkeling excursions during the day, but deserted that night. The silence of the night and the calm, warm water added to the sense of isolation, and the two of them were submerged in the waves. They swam in awe, captivated by the beauty surrounding them, unaware of the lurking danger just beneath the surface. They marveled at the beauty of the Caribbean night as they floated side by side, enjoying the tranquility of the moment. But as the minutes passed, they drifted farther from the ship than they realized. The sound of the waves against the hull grew softer, and the platform lights became distant specks. Suddenly, Claire stiffened, treading water. She felt something brush against her leg. It wasn't the gentle touch of a fish or the usual drift of seaweed. It was firm, purposeful, and unmistakably different. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it was just her imagination, but the growing unease in her chest told her otherwise. Her instincts screamed that something was wrong. Before Claire could voice her concern to Jason, there was a loud splashing sound from beneath the water. Something massive surged underneath her, and in a split second, a crushing pressure clamped around her side. She was yanked below the surface before she could even scream. Jason turned just in time to see Claire disappear into the depths. A dark, unmistakable shape, a great white shark, broke through the violent churn of the water, its dorsal fin slicing through the surface like a knife. He froze, paralyzed by the sight. The terror of it all momentarily gripped him. Then instinct kicked in. Without thinking, he dove under the water, blindly reaching for Claire. What he saw underwater would haunt him forever. The shark, over 15 feet long, was thrashing violently, its massive jaws locked around Claire's torso, dragging her deeper into the abyss. Blood stained the water, turning the bioluminescent glow into a sickly red hue. Jason reached out, desperately grabbing for Claire's arm, but the shark's grip was relentless, its strength overpowering him. The shark twisted its body in a powerful death roll, dragging both Claire and Jason deeper into the water. Just as Jason's lungs screamed for air, he felt a strong grip on his shoulder. One of the crew members had jumped in, carrying a rescue buoy, and was pulling him back toward the surface. Jason fought against it at first, panic and desperation clouding his mind as he tried to reach Claire. But another crew member, already on board a motorized dinghy, reached the scene and started to pull them in. With every ounce of strength, Jason finally let go of his futile struggle, realizing the only way he could survive was to get back to the surface. Claire was gone. The shark had taken her with it as it vanished into the depths. Jason, shaken to his core, was hauled onto the deck of the ship. His body shook uncontrollably, coughing up seawater as he collapsed, overwhelmed by the trauma. The crew worked quickly, wrapping him in a blanket. But it was clear they couldn't help Claire anymore. The captain informed the passengers of the tragedy the next morning and changed course, heading back to Providenciales. Authorities and marine experts launched an investigation. But Claire and the shark remained elusive. The incident shocked the cruise industry, raising concerns about passenger safety. Jason, grappling with the loss of his wife, became part of a tragedy that haunted everyone involved. Although great white sharks were uncommon in the Caribbean's warm waters, they were not unheard of. Experts speculated that the shark may have been drawn to the area by an influx of prey species or an unusual migration pattern, which had likely led to the tragic encounter. In the aftermath, the Elysium Voyager enacted stricter safety measures. Swimming at night was banned, and the number of lifeguards on duty during water-based excursions was increased to prevent similar incidents. The cruise line also offered counseling services for passengers who had witnessed the attack. Jason returned to Denver alone, a changed man. He struggled with overwhelming grief and survivor's guilt, distancing himself from family and friends. For months he wrestled with the trauma, unable to shake the images of that night, or the crushing weight of losing Claire. The incident would haunt him for the rest of his life, and it became a constant, painful reminder of how fleeting and fragile life can be. Jason couldn't shake the memory of Claire's last moments and the shark's unblinking eyes. He channeled his trauma into activism, advocating for marine safety and working with conservation groups to raise awareness about shark behavior. The attack sparked a broader debate about the ethics of marine tourism, with many questioning if luxury cruises were harming fragile ecosystems and endangering both wildlife and humans. The Elysium Voyager continued operating but never fully recovered. Bookings dropped after the attack, as passengers couldn't shake the memory of Claire Altheon and the predator lurking in the depths, a haunting reminder of the ocean's dangerous beauty. The morning sky off the coast of Maine was a restless gray, with low clouds sagging over the Atlantic's churning waters. Waves slapped against the sides of Captain Tom Peterson's fishing boat as he and his crew cast their lines into the deep. The men, seasoned by years of hauling in their livelihood from these waters, worked with a practiced rhythm, their voices drowned by the wind and the creak of the wooden deck. It was August 3, 2025, a date that would haunt the coastal community forever. The day had begun like any other, with lobster pots and tuna nets dropped overboard. The ocean, vast and indifferent, yielded both plenty and peril. But lately, rumors had spread among fishermen. There were whispers of a massive predator patrolling the deeper waters. Some had seen the dark silhouette cutting through the waves, its dorsal fin slicing the surface like a knife. Others dismissed it as fishermen's gossip, tall tales meant to pass long hours at sea. Captain Peterson wasn't one for stories. He trusted what he could see, smell, and touch. But even he couldn't deny that something strange was afoot. Schools of fish were acting erratically, scattering in frenzied patterns, as if something monstrous lurked below. The first tug on the line that morning seemed ordinary, perhaps a large tuna or a stubborn shark. Peterson grunted as he gripped the rod, the muscles in his arms taut from years of hauling heavy catches. The crew gathered, eyes narrowing as the line cut through the water with impossible strength. Whatever was on the other end was massive. The boat lurched as the creature fought back, pulling against the line with a force that rattled the rigging. Peterson's teeth clenched, sweat beading on his brow as he barked orders for the crew to stabilize the boat. The wind whipped across the deck and the waves grew more aggressive, as though the ocean itself conspired to keep its dark secret hidden. The battle dragged on for about an hour, the rod bending dangerously close to snapping. Peterson's hands were raw and trembling, but he refused to let go. Slowly, painfully, the crew gained the upper hand, hauling the beast closer to the surface. When it finally broke through the waves, a collective gasp swept through the boat. A great white shark, its body sleek and glistening, thrashed violently in the water. It was a monster, nearly 23 feet long, its jaws lined with rows of serrated teeth capable of crushing bone. Scars crisscrossed its hide, a testament to years of survival in the brutal depths of the Atlantic. Blood foamed around its body as it fought to free itself, eyes black and unyielding. The men worked furiously to subdue the shark using every bit of equipment they had. Steel cables groaned under the strain as the creature was finally hoisted onto the deck, its body slamming down with a thunderous crash. Water and blood pooled around it, the stench thick in the salty air. Captain Peterson approached cautiously, his boots slick against the wet deck. The shark's gills flared, its massive body still twitching with residual energy. Even in death, it radiated power. It was then that Peterson noticed something unusual. A bulge in the shark's midsection, grotesquely swollen and misshapen. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier triumph replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. Sharks were known to swallow anything in their path, but this was different. Grabbing a knife from his belt, Peterson steeled himself and made the first incision. The blade slid through the tough skin, releasing a putrid stench that turned the men's stomachs. Blood and viscera spilled onto the deck, but it was what emerged next that froze them in place. Small, pale fragments, too familiar to be mistaken for anything else. Panic swept through the crew as they recoiled from the gruesome sight. Peterson's heart raced, his mind struggling to process the horror before him. With trembling hands, he sifted through the remains, each piece confirming what he already feared. The bones were unmistakably human. Days earlier, the entire coastal community had been shaken by the disappearance of a family boat. The vessel, carrying parents and their 2 young children, had set out for a leisurely day on the water. When it failed to return by nightfall, search teams scoured the ocean, finding only debris floating aimlessly in the waves. No sign of the family had been recovered. Until now. Peterson's breath hitched as he recognized what remained of the children's clothing, fragments of a bright yellow life jacket torn beyond recognition. He forced himself to keep going, knowing that whatever answers they could provide to the grieving families rested in this grotesque dissection. The crew stood in stunned silence, their faces pale and eyes wide with disbelief. Fishermen were no strangers to death, but this was different. This was personal, tragic, and incomprehensible. The authorities were notified immediately. Within hours, marine biologists, Coast Guard officials, and forensic experts swarmed the boat, their grim task unfolding under the somber sky. The shark was dissected further, and what they found confirmed the unthinkable. The children had been pulled from the water during the attack, their bodies consumed by the predator. The news sent shockwaves through the community. Parents held their children tighter, fishermen spoke in hushed tones, and the ocean, once a source of life and sustenance, became a place of fear. The discovery made headlines across the country, a grim reminder of nature's relentless power. Experts weighed in, theorizing that the shark's size and aggression were the results of dwindling food sources and environmental changes. The creature had been patrolling the area for weeks, its territory overlapping with popular boating routes, but no explanation could ease the pain of the families who had lost their loved ones. Captain Peterson never returned to those waters. The memory of that day was etched into his mind, a nightmare that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The ocean had always been unpredictable, but now it held a darkness he couldn't face. In the months that followed, stricter safety measures were implemented along the coast. Warning systems were installed and patrols increased. But the scars remained, a testament to the fragile line between humanity and the wild. Although the shark was gone, the echoes of that fateful day lingered. Morning of September 14, 2024, the 60-foot research vessel Azure Dawn sailed out of Newport, Rhode Island. A 20-person film crew, headed by director Margot Fenwick, a trailblazing filmmaker known for her compelling nature documentaries, boarded the ship. The crew's ambitious and risky mission was to capture previously unheard-of footage of great white sharks in the deep Atlantic waters. Their destination was the North Atlantic's Shark Alley, a 200-mile offshore area that has long been a great white shark hotspot. It was a calm day with a pale, cloudless sky and an endless expanse of blue ocean. Shark cages, long-range cameras, and underwater drones were among the cutting-edge technologies aboard the Azure Dawn. The crew had been researching great white migration patterns and consulting with marine biologists for months to plan this expedition. Despite not being scientists, they greatly benefited from the knowledge of those who were. Excitement and anticipation filled the air on the yacht. They had no idea they were headed straight for a nightmare. The expedition's initial days proceeded without incident. The crew even saw a few baby sharks circling the boat from a distance and captured amazing videos of smaller marine life. Among the crew were first mate Donovan Duke, sound engineer Petra Voss, and cinematographer Elias Thornhill, some of the best in the business. With years of experience working on high-stakes projects, they were unfazed by the dangers of filming in areas where sharks were common. By the fourth day, the group had traveled far from the coast. The yacht appeared as a single speck in the vast ocean, and the water had turned a dark, ominous blue. In an attempt to capture the great white's nocturnal habits, the crew set up their gear for a night shoot as the sun began to set. As the temperature dropped, a spooky silence descended upon the sea. Around 9:30 p.m., the Azure Dawn's hull echoed with a slight but unnerving percussion. The crew brushed it off as the yacht moved against the flow, but the thuds grew louder and more powerful within minutes. Margot Fenwick instructed the crew to investigate. Leaning over the railing, Elias Thornhill held a flashlight. He saw a huge shadow, one that dwarfed everything he had ever seen, gliding just beneath the surface, and it made his blood run cold. Once more the shark struck with terrifying force. Equipment crashed to the deck as the yacht was rocked by the impact. As water began to seep into the lower compartments, panic broke out among the crew. The realization that a great white shark was attacking them and would not stop hit them like a tidal wave. The yacht was repeatedly struck by the shark, which was estimated to be more than 20 feet long and nearly 2 tons in weight. Each impact was more severe than the last. With its fiberglass hull cracking under tremendous pressure, the Azure Dawn moaned under the attack. Margot made an effort to maintain order, but the crew was already rushing around as their survival instincts took over. As the shark circled the boat, sound engineer Petra Voss grabbed a makeshift weapon, a pole from a camera rig, and tried to repel it, while Donovan Mallory and a few others hurried to deploy the life rafts. With its icy black eyes fixed on its prey, the creature showed no signs of fear. Its enormous jaws snapped just inches from the railing as it sprang out of the water. Chaos gave way to horror as the yacht tilted. The 3 crew members thrown into the water were Felix Drayton, a rookie sound assistant deckhand, Leona Hargrave, and assistant cameraman Silas Rourke. As the shark drew closer, their cries rang out through the darkness. Silas was dragged under first, his struggle ending in a cloud of red as the crew looked on helplessly. Felix and Leona attempted to swim back to the yacht, but the shark persisted. They vanished in a matter of seconds as well. The rest of the crew was aware of their limited time. There was no sign of the shark backing down and the yacht was sinking. The crew was led to the emergency life raft, kept close to the stern by Margot, who was stern but pale, despite suffering a deep gash on his arm from falling debris. Donovan Mallory spearheaded the effort to inflate the raft while others gathered the first aid kit, flares, and global positioning system beacon they could find. As the crew struggled to lower the life raft into the water, the shark continued its assault, crashing into the stern of the yacht. When the shark breached again, its strong tail sweeping across the deck, cinematographer Elias Thornhill barely escaped being dragged overboard. Although the raft was successfully launched, the procedure was far from straightforward. A few people were thrown into the water by a wave and had to be dragged back on board, just in time to see the shark return. The crew paddled frantically to escape the sinking yacht after the raft was finally in the water. At the exact moment the shark focused on the life raft, the Azure Dawn vanished beneath the waves. The shark moved in ominous circles, its dorsal fins slicing like a blade through the water. To repel it, the crew used poles, oars, and even an empty camera case. After what seemed like an eternity, the shark eventually lost interest and disappeared into the depths. The survivors' bodies were bruised and their nerves were frayed as they floated for hours. They were rescued at dawn after being discovered by a passing fishing boat. 17 of the 20 crew members survived, but many suffered psychological and physical injuries. Once a fearless filmmaker, Margot Fenwick vowed never to return to the open sea. After undergoing surgery to treat his injuries, Donovan Mallory, praised as a hero for his quick thinking, recovered. The event garnered international attention and sparked discussions about the morality and safety of filming in hazardous settings. While some claimed the attack was an unusual occurrence, Others chastised the crew for entering shark territory without taking the necessary safety measures. In response, the scientific community pointed out that great whites hardly ever acted in such an aggressive manner unless they were threatened or provoked. But the reasons didn't matter to the survivors. For the rest of their lives, they would bear the visible and invisible scars from the attack. The video they had recorded was lost, and the azure dawn was never found again. All that was left was a tale of fear, survival, and the sobering realization of nature's unpredictability. Ultimately, the Atlantic reclaimed its secrets, leaving behind only sorrowful questions and a lasting sense of wonder for the predator that dominated its depths.